am compelled by Schlock.
Well, what is up, Schlockulites? I am here bringing our Rockula Rewind special with a very special guest, probably the world's greatest super fan of Rockula, S. Michael Sims. How's it going, man? What do you prefer, Michael or Mike?
Mike.
Mike? Would you
S.
say...
Michael is my writer's title. It's my formal title. So Mike is great. Yeah, thanks.
Well, it sounds very professional. I like it. Would
Thanks.
you say that you are, aside from the people who actually worked on the film, maybe the world's foremost expert on Rockula?
Without a doubt. Yeah, ask any Rockulite out there. They'll tell you. Talk to Mike.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait for you to share stories with us and nuggets and sort of, yeah, do this rewind. We watched this movie about 7 months ago. We just kind of found it out of the blue, did a show on it and saw that you had posted it in the Rockula fan page or fan group on Facebook. And we kind of got in touch and this is happening. So you were very instrumental in kind of this Rockula revival. There was no Blu-ray of it, or there was even no DVD of it, correct?
That's correct. I thought, what injustice? How is it that I've never heard of this movie? And then once I watched it like 5 times, I was like, how is it that there is no DVD or Blu-ray even? So I had to do what I could.
Would you mind walking us through that journey? How you got from never hearing of Rockula before to getting a Blu-ray put together and getting the cast and crew back together? I know you have a ton of cool stuff to say, so I just want to get you started.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you guys for being open-minded enough to revisit this, because you're the first people I've met who have said, sure, okay, we'll take a second look. And yeah, so for me, I've always loved cult musicals, cult movies, schlock. There's been something I've been dying to say since I met you guys. Schlockula.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Has a nice ring to it. But yeah, I was, thank God for streaming services, because they're giving a second life to a lot of films that never had a chance to begin with. And Rockula was one of those. I was just flipping through Amazon one night, and I had just watched a crappy cult musical from the early 80s that had Bruce Jenner in it. Pre-op Bruce Jenner. I'm not sure how to refer to him. Caitlyn Jenner is in her former self.
Yeah.
That's the best I can manage.
What musical was that?
Oh man, it was it also had the woman who plays the old lady in The Last Unicorn, the voice of the old lady in that. And I don't know, man, it was so obscure I can't even remember the title, but I'm gonna have to look it up again because it was bad. Really bad. Like, it had the Village People in it. So yeah, it was just out there. So I was like, man, there's got to be other stuff like this out there. So sure enough, Rockula popped up as a suggestion. I thought, wow, that's a funny name for a movie. So I gave it a shot, fell in love with it instantly. And again, I watched it a few more times and was just taken aback by the injustice of there being no media out there for it. So what I did was kind of the same thing with how I met you guys. I started scouring the internet, looking for people who had done podcasts and reviews. YouTube is a great source. You just type Rockula in quotes and there's tons of stuff that comes up. You guys were one of those. So what I did was I created a Fans of Rockula page on Facebook, and I started inviting people to come, contribute and talk about it. And that included the cast and crew, the surviving cast and crew of Rockula itself. Tawny Foray, who is now Tawny Ellis, the brunette that's behind you on your right there. In the picture, she was the first of the cast to join the Fans of Rockula. Yep. And she was so cool and down to earth and gracious. And it just snowballed from there. I ended up getting the director. He's now a co-admin on the fan page.
Yeah,
his
the
brother
admins,
did the soundtrack.
They are like a who's who of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So cool.
I rub shoulders with them every day. So it's really an example of making the most of your fandom. And I've got just so many rabbit holes that I ended up going down and doing that even more. It's just funny how when you're passionate about something, it snowballs into, more than you could have ever imagined. So
how does one get the ball rolling to create a Blu-ray from a movie that I don't believe was probably very successful, which is why it never got a DVD release, and to say, hey, we really think that there's a market for this. Hey, try it out.
So I'm a little ashamed to admit I kind of manufactured a fan base. There is a small cult following out there. Don't get me wrong, but I wanted this Blu-ray so badly that I was like, I can't wait, to get everybody together. So I actually added, at the time you could add anybody to your fan page. So I added all my friends and family to this Rockula page. Half of them got back to me like, what the hell are you doing?
Hey, man. What I guarantee, like my mom and my aunt are watching this show, and they're probably some of the only people watching it. So I absolutely understand. You gotta do what you gotta do to get the word out.
Exactly. You work with who you got. So I ended up with close to 800 fans on the Fans of Rockula page, which
awesome.
And of course all the original cast and crew chiming in, and the photos and the podcast and everything. And at that point, I reached out to Jeffrey Levy, who was a writer and producer of Rockula as well as Ghoulies, Ghoulies 2, and a bunch of other stuff over the years. And he was the one who made the first phone call. And then a week later, I got a phone call from Shout Factory, Scream Factory, their subdivision, from a guy named Henry Weintraub, who said, are you interested in helping me create a Rockula Blu-ray? Of course, I was all over it. And so I just sent him everything I could. I put him in contact with another fan who had the laser disc, and I believe the laser disc is where they did the transfer from. And then he just kind of went off on his own from there. He got a hold of the cast and the crew, did some interviews with them. There's a commentary on there. Just kind of a dream come true.
Awesome. And interesting thing about the Blu-ray, I saw this on your 30th anniversary Halloween. Was it on Halloween?
Yeah. So it was cool. Special? The film wrapped on Halloween, and every Halloween it's kind of a tradition for a lot of fans to watch the movie. And we did the 30th reunion on Halloween as well.
That's awesome.
So I guess if you have the not the Blu-ray, the laser disc, that is apparently the best way to listen to the movie because it's in full 5.1 surround.
Yeah, if you want the original soundtrack, but on the Blu-ray, there's an alternate soundtrack. So,
okay.
It depends. It's different strokes for different folks.
I mean, if you're a fan, you should try and get both, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, come on.
I'm a completist. Yeah,
right. I'm just gonna say that there are so many cult movies out there that wish they had you as an Uber fan. There's so many cult movies out there that, a handful of people love. And your story is kind of inspiring of hey, if you love this schlocky movie so much, you're not alone, and you can actually make a difference and help preserve it and show it to a whole nother generation of, schlock.
Yeah. Get it revitalized. So kind of moving on, I think we have another section here. I really want to know after we got in contact and we decided to do this show, I went back, and not only did I rewatch Rockula, I rewatched our review of it, and I was kind of like, we really hammered onto this movie, and I've read some of your reviews of other reviews, and you come down with the hammer on some of those people that don't give this movie its due. And so I was really interested. Why come back onto this show when Chris, you said it's tough love, right? We said
I also revisited the movie, and then I listened to our episode again, and we did rail on it, but we also gave it a lot of props but we were hard on it. Yeah. So it's just interesting to like what made you decide to come on and help us with this rewind where we review it and reevaluate it.
I have a good reason for why we were so hard on it, but I want to hear your explanation first.
So a lot of podcasts and YouTube channels are hard on Rockula. Mm-hmm. I originally had the idea that there's no such thing as bad press, but that's not entirely true. And in fact, I've been approached by some of the cast who were like, "Hey, that podcast you put up, he said, I wonder what she did to who she slept with to get that part, and things like that." And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." And I would take it down, but that's one of the things that set you guys apart was that, yes, you were honest about your first viewing, but you were also respectful of the talent. And I think anytime that you do a review of, especially something that's supposed to be weird and out there and silly, you should keep an open mind and try to find, what were the filmmakers trying to do? What did they do well? And yeah, let's talk about the schlock. It's like you guys break it down, the schlock and then the rest of it. It's like you were honest but polite. I should put it that way. So,
okay.
Well, thank you. So, when we revisited this, let me back up. Before we revisited it before we even got into contact, Rockula was a bit of a touchstone for us. It's something we kind of kept revisiting
bringing back up.
Yeah, bringing back up. I think some of the other movies we've looked at have had actors or just people that have worked on Rockula. Anyway, it's just been a milestone for us in some way. We keep bringing it up, and so that's why we were willing to like go back and look at it. We see that there's someone who is clearly very excited about this movie. And when we watched it, I mean, I remember we kept saying like we really wanted to love it, but it just didn't quite hit for us. But then when we were talking on the phone, you said something to me that really helped recontextualize this whole movie for me. You compared it with, well, what did you say? You said you took exception to the fact that we said that the songs weren't catchy. And then you said, yeah, but what horror musical comedy songs are catchy? And you brought up Time Warp and Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I didn't even think of putting it in the same category or thinking of that as a subgenre of horror and of musicals and to put it up against Rocky Horror Picture Show. And then once I started thinking of it like that, and then rewatched it, I was like I get it. Like I understand what's going on here now and like what I'm supposed to be looking at. And I think that's very interesting. Movies and stories in general, you have to know how to participate with them, right? Is this a drama? Am I supposed to be feeling with these people? Is it a comedy? Am I supposed to be laughing at all the weird things? Or is this a horror musical comedy that is sort of whimsical and goofy and off the wall and just supposed to be fun? So that is sort of where I'm at now, having rewatched it.
Mm-hmm. I'm so glad that my perspective was able to help you have a possibly more open second look. That's great.
Seen the light.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because like we've talked about this before with other movies where as you're watching the movie, it teaches you how to watch the movie, right? And you're talking about that with like drama or comedy or horror. Like if it's supposed to be a horror, does it scare you? If it's supposed to be a comedy, does it make you laugh? But each movie, even within genre, is unique into itself. And when you have such an off-the-wall, quirky movie like this, the first time you see it, you really haven't seen it because there's so much going on, right? That but when I rewatched our review, we were both just kind of taken aback. And I know I went, a lot because that's where I was at, because that movie, I was just like, but rewatching it, I knew what to expect. I knew what the movie was. And so I didn't have to work as hard. And so I was able to kind of like bask in all the little details and all the visual humor and sight gags and funny lines, and how like each character is like really in their own world doing their own thing, and like how they like cross connect. And like, it reminded me of a couple other movies in that era. Like you would, in your article, we're talking about the info
article, by the way, on Morbidly Beautiful, and once we get this up on YouTube, we'll put a link to that.
Yeah, great article.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, that was my first article for them, so I really appreciate that.
Yeah, very well.
Yeah, really cool. But in that article, you mentioned the infomercial with Thomas Dolby, where he's like, upselling coffins and graves and things, and that's one of my favorite bits. It's hilarious when he's turning the coffin over and it's spinning in the grave, and like the first time I saw it, I was just like, what? And this time I knew it was coming, so I could hear the little body clinking, right? And I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is so funny. I was just laughing out loud, like so good. But it reminded me of UHF in that bit, where it's like there's an overarching movie, but then there's these characters that are doing their own thing that you get inserted. And it builds character, but it's mainly there for comic purposes. But it's such a whimsical way to put a movie together that in kind of that late 80s era, there were a lot of movies like that I'm just like, okay, I get this movie. I get how I'm supposed to view it, and thoroughly enjoyed it on a rewatch.
I'm so glad to hear that. I see so many podcasts and YouTube channels where people just don't get it. But what's more is they don't want to get it. They're mean about it, and it's easy to pick on the low hanging fruit, right? Let's find a low budget movie and just pick on the actors and whatever. But it's like you said, once you kind of know what the movie's trying to do, what it really is all about, how to watch it, you can enjoy yourself and just kick back and this is fun.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I will recant as well on the music, saying that it's not catchy. Because
that's just what I was going to say.
So since 7 months ago, you get like little earworms to yourself.
Yeah,
I will find myself just doing something and just going, "Hey, Rockula," and like just say that over and over and over again. And so again, upon the rewatch, I'm like, no, there's some good stuff in here. Like, I want to rock you. I want to rock you, la. Like, that's some great stuff.
There's some really great stuff. Like, and again, because I knew what the movie was, I was able to like just relax and enjoy it and like take it all in. And the music, while not, the greatest thing in the entire world, became amazing. Like, I thoroughly enjoyed it enough to wonder if there's a soundtrack. So that's my next question, because there are a lot of 80s soundtracks from cult classics and schlock movies that I try and collect and that I love. And I'm like, man, I kind of want this soundtrack. So talk to me about that.
Absolutely. So you guys brought it up in your review. You did your research in your original review. Cannon Films went bankrupt right around the time Rockula was released. And so no soundtrack was officially released. But as you can see in the picture, somebody had the bright idea of collecting all the songs on cassette. Yes, boys and girls, that's a cassette tape. Audio cassette tape is what that is. And it was fascinating, the process that they used to get nice, clear, beautiful sound off of it. They baked it in an oven. I've never heard of this process before. And Hill Berkovici, the brother of the director, is on the fan page, and he described the whole, how they did it. And it's really fascinating stuff, way above my pay grade. But there is incredible. A soundtrack. Yep, there's a soundtrack with all the music from the movie and some bonus music that didn't make the cut as well. And you can tell it's like in the same late 80s style of the other songs. And you can hear, this is definitely Rockula music, even though it didn't make the film. So
songs for the movie itself, correct?
Correct.
It's specifically made for the movie.
Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah.
And we do have it available on the Fans of Rockula page for free. That was put together by the director and his brother as a gift to the fans. So,
that's amazing. That's awesome.
So we just had a picture up, speaking of kind of the music and the music scene, of the three little girls who were dancing around. They were in a few different scenes in the movie. apparently they are or were an indie group. Chris, you know some more about this?
I've seen them described as neo-punk, which, okay, whatever. They existed in the 80s, the mid to late 80s. They were on the David Letterman show with one of their singles. It's on YouTube somewhere.
I watched it. Yep.
Nepotism.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh. And there's another one called Trilobites.
Yeah. No, and you can listen to the EP they put out pretty much on any streaming platform. It's really cool. So this was something that your article really helped me with, because again, it's a quirky movie and they do quirky things. But when this came on, I was like, that's just a weird choice. Like, why would you do that? But then I learned that no, it was just an actual band in that scene around that time. And so that makes total sense of like, yeah, we have this musical thing and there's this band and they have 3 little girls and this woman and they're like adjacent to Devo. Of course, we're going to put them in the movie. Like, and so like, it just really helped me contextualize like the time period that movie was made in, and how it also felt like a behind the scenes of the music scene in that area. So what went from like something that took me out of the movie on first viewing, with the help of your article and then, doing a deep dive and listening to the visiting kids, really became this really fun, like little tidbit that I'm like, oh, that's awesome. These people, and then I can, talk about it. And so it's just, it's really cool to like learn things that help you learn how to appreciate the movie for what it's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So she got, Robin was the character. Nancy Ferguson is her real name. And she got invited to be part of the movie by the producer's then girlfriend, Pamela Skaist, who is now Pamela Skaist Levy. And she is also the person who invented Juicy Couture fashion line. She got her start with Rockula. So again, there's all these different rabbit trails and rabbit holes to jump down where it's interconnected between the industry, the music industry, the movie industry, even the fashion industry. And if you look at the costumes, I mean, they're pretty unique.
So she did the costuming?
Yeah, she was the costume designer for the film.
Did the costuming for Rockula?
Talk about humble beginnings, right?
That's why they have the Rockula thing, right? That's a precursor to Juicy, where it has the words on the clothing. It could have said Juicy.
You just figured out the etymology of Juicy.
Yeah, wow.
It's Rockula.
You blew my mind. You literally just blew my mind. I don't know. I'm bowing out for like a minute. You guys talk. I don't know how to process that. That is so cool.
There it is.
See, you change the wording and put it on a butt, and you are a multimillionaire. There it is. That's the secret sauce, everybody.
See, now what I want sweats with Rockula on the butt.
Yes. Yes.
Oh man, I bet she would love that too.
I want pink sweats, Rockula on the butt. I'll wear them. I'll wear them on the show.
Well, and speaking of interesting wardrobe choices, we just had a picture of it up, but you say that this is one of the things that gets brought up most in podcast reviews.
Yes, especially in print. I don't think I've read a single print review of Rockula, even dating back to the 90s, where they didn't talk about Bo Diddley in spandex.
It is a unique
and there
sight.
he is. It's your WTF moment, and they all mention it. And yeah, I mean, Juicy Couture right there. He looks great.
If that is on your bucket list, then you got to watch this movie.
Yeah. You just have to watch this movie. You just have to watch this movie.
So
just strategically placed gold records.
So we're kind of getting into it. Can you tell us what are the special things about this movie? And this can be in general or just to you specifically. Like what makes it so special? We've kind of touched on it some before, but I'd really like to hear you get into that.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me was how I found it to begin with. It is a weird musical, okay? And I think we need weird musicals in our lives from time to time. It's one of the reasons Rocky Horror is so popular. My other favorite horror/comedy rock musical is Phantom of the Paradise. And you'll see in my article where I kind of talk about these other films and the fact that they are like time capsules. They managed to capture the music of the time period.
Mhm.
Phantom of the Paradise probably did the best job of it in the 70s. And so you have everything that was hot in the 70s in Phantom of the Paradise. You've got a Kiss-like band. You've got a throwback band like Sha-Na Na. You've got singer-songwriters, Paul Williams, a crooner, a female crooner. So it just, honestly, it captured the essence of the 70s in music. And then Rockula did the same thing, maybe even a little better than Phantom of the Paradise. If you think about all the different styles of music that are there in Rockula, you've got, just the straight up pop song with Mona. You've got Tony Basil doing, R&B. You've got hard rock at the end with the Elvis Ralph coming out of the mirror. I mean, he really shredded on that guitar. And he played all that too. Dean Cameron is an awesome guitarist.
Awesome.
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of, I think, did you mention one of his side gigs on the show? You may have mentioned it. He now has a side gig called Karaoke, where he plays in a live band for people to come up and sing karaoke.
That's killer.
Just a little factoid about him.
That's
He's done
awesome.
all kinds of cool stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing for me, is that it crystallized an era. And then beyond that, it gets personal, So By My Side is one of the songs that they sing together, Ralph and Mona. And it's innocent. It's got that late 80s kind of innocent quality to it. The girl looks like my girlfriend looked in the late 80s, early 90s. So it's just kind of special to me. It hit home, there's the picture, just careless love, right? Beyond everything else, Rockula is a love story. So that's actually how it started. And you did cover some of this on your original show about how it started out as a serious romantic comedy. That's kind of an oxymoron, a serious romance, and then developed into a romantic comedy and then just a schlockster piece. So,
Well, and that's something that I think is really interesting about it. So one of my holdbacks on it when I first watched it, right, the title Rockula sounds like Dracula. And so not knowing anything about it, I came into it thinking, okay, this is a story about Dracula doing rock and roll music. And so through the whole thing, I was trying to figure that out, trying to figure out, okay, where's is Ralph Dracula? And I think you said in your article that he's just your everyday vampire. He's your average vampire. And it's interesting because the whole vampire aspect, it's important, but it's really not that important. He's a lovesick, not quite teenager, but it's
young
something
adult,
more in
early
young
20s.
adult.
Yeah.
It's more in line with something like Better Off Dead, maybe, that genre of film. And he just so happens to be a vampire that isn't very good at vampiring for some reason.
A 400-year-old version at that.
yeah. And maybe that's why. So I do have some story questions for you, because I think that you mentioned that there was another script of some kind, or am I reading that
So
correctly?
I actually found the earliest known Rockula artifact on eBay the other day. From 1986 is when they first wrote the story and pitched it to Canon, and it was as a serious movie. I don't know why. If you're going to do a serious movie, why call it Rockula? Unless he actually was going to form a serious rock band like the Vampire Lestat or something. They never really fully explained that. But I have seen the script. It is available on the Fans of Rockula page to look at. And yeah, it was a serious romance movie. So that did not sell well to the Cannon brothers, to Menachem and Yoram. Globus, and they said, no, make it a comedy. So all right.
So it's interesting to me when movies get rewritten and their genre is completely changed, right? But the core story is still similar. So your best judgment, what percentage of the original idea made it through to the final product?
I'd say a good 30%. And that's what I love. One of the things I love about Rockula and what made it personal to me was it is a romantic movie. It's a love story. And since that's where it sprang from, that makes a lot of sense that they would keep a lot of those core aspects of the original screenplay.
So what is the mirror Ralph? Is that it's a curse of some kind? I've gathered. He says he'll tell you all about it later, and we never hear all about it later. That is my biggest question for the movie.
I think it's everybody's biggest question. I think it's something that the filmmakers did to perplex reviewers and podcasters and show people. No, I think that they were smoking a little of the good stuff. And thought, you know what, let's do something different with the reflection thing, because everybody's done the vampire no reflection thing. Let's make our vampire different. And in fact, if you go to tvtropes.com, that's one of the things they criticize it for, is the trope of our vampires are different, so they're not sparkly. They can see their own reflection, or at least Ralph can. So my best explanation. Yeah,
it's interesting because it's not all the vampires, it's just Ralph. Right. So that makes it like the other, because we have the gag where his mother doesn't see her shadow or not shadow, her reflection, but he does. And it's not just a reflection, but it's another entity who he can communicate with and work through issues and supply comedic relief. I think it's a really smart storytelling device that you get a second character for free. One, so you're not just having someone just talking out loud to themselves. You can hash out problems. You can move the story forward. It's a really smart device, but it still leaves you scratching your head. What exactly is it?
It's talking to yourself in a movie without making it weird that a person is talking to themselves and just giving exposition.
Yeah. So my best explanation is based on the curse itself. So Ralph was cursed by someone. I'm not even sure. I don't even think they say who originally cursed him, but he was cursed to have his lover killed every 22 years by a pirate with a rhinestone peg leg, wielding a ham bone. And it's this legacy. They call it the legacy sometimes. Sometimes it's the curse. And it happens every 22 years. And I thought, well, Ralph's the only character who has to deal with this curse. Is probably part of the curse. And the mirror Ralph kind of gives you clues about that as well. He's like, are you ever going to break this curse so I can get out of here? So I think that it's part of the curse is my best explanation. But also it doubles as kind of a psychological thing, right? So the mirror Ralph gets to do things on the mirror side that real Ralph would never do. You see him hanging out with gorgeous, scantily clad models, which is a little inconsistent, right? Because he says, when am I ever going to get laid? Well, you just had a woman in the last scene. So when we talk about things that don't work, I mean, there's a couple of things like that, inconsistencies, but, he is the cooler Ralph. Ralph is the dork, and Mirror Ralph is not. He's got it together. He's got the ideas. Yeah. There you go. It doesn't get any cooler than that, right?
Do you think that the cursor, I don't know if that's the correct terminology, the person who put the curse on him was perhaps Madame Benoit.
That would make perfect sense. I didn't want you to. She says, I didn't want you to leave me, so I put this curse on you so you would never leave. And I gave you a friend in the mirror to keep you company. I mean, they sure could have expanded on the dynamics of it and the rules or whatever. But I mean, that would make perfect sense. That's a great theory.
Yeah. It's just a crazy movie. What other questions do we have left? I know we had some we really wanted to get to.
Well, I don't know if I should ask you this or not, because you love the movie, but on our show we always go through the good, the bad, and the schlock. We're talking about the good. We're talking about what we talk about as schlock, just kind of ideas and theories and things that stood out. But do you have anything bad with this movie?
You did just mention the inconsistencies, which I think that's any movie, really. The more you watch it, the more.
Yeah. Again, it's this story logic, right?
Yeah, I think they could have and probably should have done a little bit better job of explaining the lore, because it's confusing. How come he can talk to himself in his reflection? Why doesn't sunlight affect him? And all little things like that. It's so hard for me not to be biased because I have watched it so many times that the soundtrack is a part of my life now. And that would be all the songs in it. But yeah, some of the songs are better than others. I'll just put it that way.
That's a fair way to put it. Yeah. And
you get that in any musical. But again, like I said, holding it up to Rocky Horror Picture Show, he's like an alien. Tim Curry is like an alien in it, or something, right? Talk about story inconsistencies. There's a lot of wild stuff going on in that movie, and people have not particularly faulted it for it, right? So when we look at Rockula, putting it up to that level, is that really a problem? Right. Story inconsistencies.
Right. Yeah,
not doing a full world build prior to the story starting or whatever.
Yeah. My other big issue was the songs did not feature the people you would have thought they would feature. Thomas Dolby does have a song in it. Of course, eventually led to the Lost Scene being rediscovered and new music put to it and all that. But he doesn't really sing except during the little commercials. And you would have expected, the She Blinded Me with Science Guy to have a big musical number. Another one is Bo Diddley. Bo Diddley himself does not really sing in the movie, other than, little bits and pieces here in Rapula, of all things, right? So you would have thought that, the premier blues man, largely responsible for the foundations of rock and roll itself, would have a song in the movie. No, he's just going to play a little bit of blues and say, man, that dude sure got the blues.
They're playing against type.
Yeah, maybe they refused. Who knows? Right? Like, no, I'm tired of doing the blues thing. Yeah.
Maybe
I want to wear spandex.
It was specifically his request,
right?
Spandex or no movie, nothing.
It could have been a budgetary issue too. Like getting a musician to act is one thing. I'm sure that's expensive, but not as expensive as like a name actor. But like getting their music and the rights to it, that might have been not possible because of the budget they had.
That's entirely the case when it comes to Thomas Dolby. They wanted to use his song, and he's like, normally there's some money involved with that. They were out of money, so they gave him a can of film instead from a Lost Scene. So
so that Lost Scene has been recovered. Can you tell us that story?
Man,
just all the background.
Yeah, this was so cool. Yeah, rubbing elbows with giants. I call this chapter. It's like, Thomas Dolby isn't just the She Blinded Me with Science guy. He's also the TED Talks music director. He did the film score for Howard the Duck and Tucker the Man in His Dream. He's a professor of music at Johns Hopkins University. He's like the 80s synth guy. And he wrote like tons of software that's still being used on phones and stuff. So to even be addressed by him originally was mind-blowing. I reached out to his page and I was like, hey, I was talking to the director of Rockula, and he told me there's this Lost Scene, this can of footage you gave him so that he could use your song, Budapest by Blimp, which is a gorgeous song. And he said hello at like 2:30 in the morning one night. And I was like, it's him. And I even woke my wife up. Like, baby, Thomas Dolby's talking to me. And it snowballed. Yeah. Yeah, a total fanboy moment. It's totally snowballed from there. He started writing me emails about it. Yeah, I'll look for it when I get a chance. Thanks for reminding me. I could tell I was kind of getting on his nerves a little bit, but, I was persistent but not obnoxious. And 4 years later, he finally, after the reunion that we did, was able to get up enough gumption to dig it out of a storage unit in California.
So that's awesome. Yeah, it's very cool that. So I guess when I'm just recounting the story that you have a video of this where you interview Thomas Dolby a little bit, and then you show the Lost Scene. But in it, he said that when they originally filmed it, they didn't have anything to play the music back. So he sang it a cappella from memory, just trying to keep best tempo that he could. And then all these years later, when he revisited it, he had to sort of play it and re-sing it and sync all of the sound back up himself. And he said that he didn't think that could have been done back then, back in the early 90s, but now due to digital editing technology and whatnot, that actually became a possibility.
So I don't know if you guys can link that or not at some point, but it is a fascinating video to watch because of exactly what you were just talking about, this reverse engineering that he had to do to match everything now to 1990 or 1988 with a kind of old can of footage that he had restored as best as they could, right? But it's been sitting in a rusty can for decades, 30 years later. And so when he had it restored, they were like, we're sorry, but it's, and he's like, it's fine. Just give me whatever you got. And he worked with what he had. And it's gorgeous. It's like almost like a silent movie feel to it. There's little pops and crackles. But what's most impressive, I think, is that his voice exactly matches the character on the screen. And he does these little sound effects. Like he takes a bite out of an apple and you hear the sound of him putting the apple to his mouth, crunching the apple in the middle of the song. And I'm like, okay, this is what a master musical technician can do, with just something that was garbage, essentially. He turned it into something really funny and beautiful.
Yeah.
So
it's awesome. A shame that it's not on the Blu-ray release.
Yes, I scrambled so hard for that.
Well, so the future of Rockula, what does that look like? Are you envisioning it as, or does this exist already? Midnight showings of it where people throw toast or maybe fake bags of blood on the screen or something. Where do you see this going now that there's kind of a revival of Rockula?
I would love for there to be like a Rockula Palooza. In my wildest dreams, I was like, hey, we'll do it for the 30th anniversary. Okay, maybe not, maybe the 35th. Okay, how about the 40th anniversary of Rockula? Who knows? I mean, one of the cool things, so you guys are the first to actually hear this. I got my hands the other day on an original Rockula script. The screenplay says canon on it. It has like liner notes and erasure marks and stuff.
Awesome.
It is coming to my house. Yes. Somebody just showed up on the Rockula page and was like, hey, anybody want this? Hello. And I was able to talk him down to a reasonable price because, hey, it's Rockula, it's not the Sound of Music or the Wizard of Oz. It's friggin' Rockula. So we got him down to a reasonable number, and I now own the proud owner of a Rockula screenplay. Well, the reason I'm so excited about it is because the producer did reach out to me a couple of years ago, about a year and a half ago, said, does anybody have a copy of this script? So even the people who were in it and made it don't have copies of this, because that's how obscure it is. And I said, why? And he said, well, there's a guy in Massachusetts who wants to make an off-Broadway musical out of Rockula, and he was wanting a copy of the screenplay. Are you kidding me? Well, it's not the first time something like this has happened. Little Shop of Horrors was based on a 1950s black and white musical. There's other just schlocky stuff out there that originated in places like where we have found Rockula, relative obscurity. So that is the future of Rockula. If I have my druthers, I love networking with B-list actors and washed up actors and actresses and musicians and people who have gone on to do other bigger things in the industry and don't mind taking a trip back to, on memory lane, like Thomas Dolby did. And just looking back and reminiscing about it, it's so cool to rub elbows with famous people. I'm just a guy. I write for a horror magazine. That's my hobby. But during the day, I've got a day job like everybody else, and here I am talking to like really cool famous people. So
you write for Morbidly Beautiful, and you said that you've also written some things for Fangoria. Is that correct?
So I have an article in the works for Fangoria. It would actually be my first official article for Fangoria, but there's some pretty high level talent involved with it. I'll just throw it out there a little bit of a plug if you don't care.
No, go right ahead, man.
Go right ahead.
It's about Friday the 13th fan films, which if you like Schlock, there's plenty of it out there for those. But there are actually a handful of good ones. And so there's been this lawsuit that has caused a new Friday the 13th movie not to come out for the past 14 years. And so these fans got together and just filled in the gaps, and carried the torch for Jason Voorhees for 14 years. And so my goal is to highlight the best of the best and give them the credit I think they deserve for doing that. So
That's awesome.
That's what the article is all about.
And
now that's Fangoria and my Morbidly Beautiful horror stuff. The other thing, I think I told you about it, this is directly Rockula related. So there's a scene in Rockula where Tony Basil is dancing with a guy in a crazy looking outfit. And us fans of Rockula could not figure out who he was because he's not credited. So somebody said, well, I think it's Shabba-Doo from the Break-In movies, Break-In and Break-In 2, Electric Boogaloo. The title is more famous than the movie, but it's still a pretty good movie. 84, I think, is when they came out. So I reached out to Shabba-Doo, who had a Facebook page. And so that's what I mean about the networking thing. I mean, this stuff just snowballs like crazy. So I reached out to him and I'm like, hey, were you in this movie Rockula with Tony Basil? He's like, no. That's actually a Shabba-Doo wannabe. He's the guy from Earth Girls Are Easy. And I'm, oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. By the way, I was a big fan of the Break-In movies. Would you mind sending me a friend request? He did. I frequented his page. He was a bright guy, funny guy, knew so much about the music industry and dance. And then over time, we developed a friendship, and he just reached out one day and he said, hey, I think you're a really good writer. How would you like to help me write my biography? Are you kidding me? Ozone from Break-In? Yes, please, and I was all over it. And we worked together for 2 years, did Zoom sessions and put together several chapters of his book. And then sadly, he passed away unexpectedly during COVID at the end of 2020. So that project is on the back burner, but he connected me with so many interesting and cool people in the industry, including Tony Basil. He danced with Tony Basil in the 70s in a group called The Lockers, along with Rerun from What's Happening. He was another one of the original Lockers. They first got famous on Soul Train, and they became so famous that they did shows like with Dick Van Dyke, like variety shows on TV. He went on to be on a huge variety show in the early 80s with Graham Chapman, of all people. So just really fascinating, obscure tendrils of, stardom that reach out from this guy. The Lockers and Shabba-Doo were basically the inventors of what we know of as modern hip-hop dance. They created break dancing, they created locking and popping and all the dance moves that we know of that are still used to this day with R&B music and all kinds of soulful music. So, it was such a special experience. And then to be able to say that it happened because I just love this movie. I never would have met Shabba-Doo if it wasn't for Tony Basil being in this, and it just snowballed from there. So that's what I mean about be passionate about the things that you love, be as involved and nerdy about it as you want. It'll pay off in some way eventually.
That's awesome.
I'm sorry to hear about the passing of your friend. God bless him and his family. But that is so cool that opens so many things for you to get connected to. That is awesome. Chris, you had a question that you were wanting to get in there.
Yeah, no, it was, he brought it up in the last thing we talked about. And then again, just with Schlock in general and so many movies out there. And I think you're a fellow Schlock fan. And we were talking about this where, like with regular movies, there's a greatest list, right? There's the Academy Award winners. There's the ones that were the blockbusters, right? So there's that touchstone where everyone can talk about the same movie. And with sci-fi and horror and fantasy and just low budget schlock movies, there are those touchstone movies, but then there's all these movies that slip through the crack, and we want to share them with everyone and be able to have this conversation. And, but if you don't know about it, or if you've heard of it but haven't seen it, then you can't have that. So what are some other movies that you think are required viewing for people who love schlock, like our listeners and like us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I mentioned this to you guys last week when we were setting up the show. There's a movie called The Forbidden Zone that features Danny Elfman when he was in the Mystic Knights of the Oingo Boingo. He plays Satan. It's directed by his brother, has another one of his relatives. So it's an Elfman project. but it also has Tattoo from Fantasy Island in it, who plays Fausto, the evil midget king. And the Rockula connection is Susan Tyrrell, plays a witch, and she sings, and she has great tracts of land. You know, she is very sexy and talented, and so you don't really get to see a lot of that in Rockula. You get a hint of like how cool she was as Chuck the bartender, and when she plays with Rockula. But I mean, if you really want to see how talented this lady was and how much of a apparent fan of Schlock she was, The Forbidden Zone. Seek it out. You will love it. It's just as bad as Troll 2 and just as good as, you know, any musical from that era. So
nice.
Well, we are running out of time. We said that we'd go 45 minutes and we are now at 50 minutes. So we are going to wrap up. What we usually do is we have, at the end of our show, we say the movie that we're going to watch next week. And we generally try to pick something off of Tubi so that it's free to everyone to watch. And we discussed this prior to the show. And our movie next week, on your suggestion, is going to be Forbidden Zone. So we're going to check that out. So if you're
next Monday, tune in and we will have a review of The Forbidden Zone. Thank you so much, Mike, for coming on.
Darby, Chris, thank you so much.
If you're a fan of Rockula, make sure you check out the fan group. If you're in the fan group, make sure you check out some more schlocky movies. Again, thank you everybody for checking us out. Thank you, Mike. I am Darby Ellis Lewis. Darby Ellis Lewis Wilson. This is Chris Anonymous. This is S. Michael Sims. We've been compelled by Schlock, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
I am